Ever told a little white lie just to kind of get through the day?
Oh, yeah?
I think we all have. But what if I told you those little tiny deceptions are more important than we realize, that they actually kind of hold society together?
Interesting.
Today we are going deep into the psychology of lying.
Okay.
We're using excerpts from a book on this subject.
Right.
And it's going to get interesting.
Well, what I find so fascinating about deception is how often it flies under the radar.
Right.
We think of lying as this big bad thing.
Uh-huh.
But it's woven into the fabric of our daily lives. From like customer service interactions to the how are yous that we exchange without even a second thought.
Okay, so let's dive into that customer service piece.
Yeah.
The book talks about this guy, Jorge Trevino,
Okay.
a former VP at Hyatt.
Wow.
He's got decades of experience in hospitality.
Okay.
And his stories really highlight the role of deception in that industry.
So Trevino's career gives us this peek behind the curtain of what he calls the people thing. Think about it. Hotels, restaurants, airlines.
Yeah.
They all train employees to create this feeling of sincere friendliness,
Right.
no matter what's actually going on.
Right. That service with a smile, even when you're dealing with a difficult customer.
Exactly. But that constant performance takes a toll.
Yeah.
Trevino talks about being grabbed by a large, angry Texan at the Ritz-Carlton.
Oh, my God.
He had to stay calm, polite, de-escalate the situation.
Right.
All while probably feeling anything pretty calm inside.
Man, that sounds stressful.
Yeah.
I guess we don't always think about the emotional labor involved in those jobs.
Yeah, and it goes even deeper.
Okay.
He also shared a story about being spat on by guests.
What?
Even then, he apologized, maintained his composure,
Wow.
and went above and beyond to try to smooth things over.
Wow. Hearing that makes you wonder what's really going on behind those seemingly effortless interactions. Have you ever gotten amazing customer service and stopped to consider the effort and maybe even the little deceptions involved?
It's a good reminder that there's often more to the story than meets the eye.
Yeah.
And this idea of deception for the sake of smoothness extends way beyond just customer service.
Okay.
Let's talk about social niceties.
Okay.
Those small lies we all tell to just grease the wheels of social interaction.
Oh, I'm definitely guilty of those. Have a nice day. When I secretly hope they get stuck in traffic. Just kidding.
Of course.
But seriously, those polite phrases are everywhere.
Exactly. The book actually has this hilarious table.
Oh.
It's called What You Say, What You Think.
Uh-huh.
And it just lays it all out.
Okay.
For example, when someone says, let's get together soon, they might actually be thinking, please, let's not.
It reminds me of that Key and Peele sketch.
Yes.
Where Jordan Peele is Obama's inner voice, Luther.
Yeah.
Just saying all the blunt, unfiltered things we suspect people are really thinking.
That's a perfect example. We all have that Luther voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we also know that letting it run wild wouldn't exactly make us popular.
Right.
So we use these social niceties to balance our desire for authenticity with the need to, not offend everyone we meet.
But is a little hot air really such a bad thing? Is there actually a benefit to all this social smoothing?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And the research suggests there might be.
Okay.
This idea of audience tuning, where we tailor our messages to suit the people we're talking to, actually seems to have some interesting effects.
So like politicians changing their speeches depending on the crowd?
Exactly.
Okay.
And studies show that when people do this, they often start to believe their own tailored messages.
Oh, wow.
It's like this feedback loop.
Okay.
Where the act of shaping our words to please others
can
actually change our own beliefs.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah.
So in a way, by telling people what they want to hear, those politicians might actually start believing it themselves.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it gets even more interesting when we look at this from an evolutionary perspective.
Okay.
Think about it being able to smooth social interactions and maintain group cohesion would have been essential for survival.
Right. Those cavemen who were brutally honest probably didn't last long.
Exactly. And there's even research showing that rudeness can have this measurable negative impact on things like creativity.
Oh, really?
And helpfulness in a group setting.
Wow.
One study found that people who witnessed someone being rude were less likely to help someone else later on.
Wow.
Even if that person was totally unrelated to the initial rudeness.
So basically, even small acts of negativity can spread.
Yeah.
While being polite might actually make us more helpful.
It seems that way.
I never thought of it like that.
It really highlights how interconnected we are.
Yeah.
Our behavior influences those around us.
Yeah.
And those little white lies, while seemingly insignificant on their own, can contribute to a more positive social environment.
This is all making me think about just how prevalent lying actually is.
Yeah.
I have a feeling we do it way more than we realize.
You're right. Bella DiPaolo,
Okay.
a psychologist at UC Santa Barbara, has done some fascinating research on this. Her early work suggested people lie about once a day. But later studies, like one by Robert Feldman, where he filmed strangers meeting for the first time, found that people lie on average 3 times every 10 minutes.
Hold on, 3 times every 10 minutes.
I know.
Are we all just talking lie machines?
It might seem that way, but before you get too worried, remember that most of these lies are not malicious. Often they're motivated by kindness, by a desire to spare someone's feelings.
Right.
Or simply keep things running smoothly.
So that little white lie we tell to avoid hurting someone's feelings actually falls under the umbrella of deception.
That's right. DePaul even called them gifts we give to people we care about.
Oh, wow.
And it's especially true with those closest to us. Think about it. Would you always be 100% brutally honest with your best friend, your partner, your family? Or are there times when a little white lie, even if it's technically a deception, helps preserve those relationships?
That's a good point. There's this tension between wanting to be truthful and wanting to protect the people we care about.
Exactly.
It's like our brains are constantly weighing those two impulses.
Exactly. And that tension is playing out all around us. From those seemingly effortless customer service interactions to the carefully crafted words of politicians trying to win our votes. It makes you wonder just how much of what we perceive as reality is actually shaped by these subtle deceptions.
That's a really interesting point. It's like we're all part of this giant unspoken agreement to play along with certain fictions because ultimately it makes life a little easier, a little more pleasant.
Precisely. And it raises a whole host of questions about why we do it, how it impacts our relationships, and whether there's a way to be more aware of this delicate dance without becoming cynical or distrusting of everyone around us.
That's a great point. We've unpacked a lot about the how of deception, but the why is just as fascinating.
It is.
So last time we talked about that challenge of going an entire day without telling even the tiniest lie.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta say, it's harder than it sounds.
It really is.
Like, what do you do when your friend asks how they look in an outfit that's well questionable?
It's a constant negotiation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you prioritize total honesty at the risk of hurt feelings?
Right.
Or do you go with the social nicety, preserving the peace?
Yeah.
But maybe sacrificing a bit of truth.
Exactly. And the book points out that this extends beyond those little social interactions. It's like those elaborate fictions we encounter in the service industry are designed to make us feel good, even if they obscure the less pleasant realities.
Think about it. Those magic bands at Disney World.
Oh, yeah.
They're this convenient way to spend money without actually feeling the pain of handing over cash.
Right.
It adds to the whole magical experience.
Right.
Even if it's a bit deceptive.
Right. It's all about creating a seamless, effortless experience.
Exactly.
Or those leather-bound check presenters at fancy restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
They're practically designed to hide the price.
Right.
So you don't have to face the financial reality of your delicious meal.
It's subtle, but effective.
Yeah.
And even something like ride-sharing apps.
Okay.
You summon a car, enjoy the ride, and step out.
Yeah.
Without ever directly handling money.
Yeah.
It all happens behind the scenes, making the transaction almost invisible.
It's like those companies are taking advantage of our desire to believe in the magic.
Right.
The illusion of effortlessness.
In a way, yes. But we're also complicit in these deceptions. We want to believe in the fairy tale, the seamless experience. It makes things more pleasant, more enjoyable, even if it's not entirely real.
But doesn't that make us a little bit gullible? Are we just falling for these carefully crafted illusions?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But it also speaks to something deeper. Our need for connection, for belonging. These shared fictions, these social contracts, help us navigate the complexities of human interaction.
Okay.
It's like we're all in on the joke.
Right.
Even if we don't always acknowledge it.
So even if we're aware of the deception on some level, we choose to play along because ultimately it serves a greater purpose.
That's an insightful way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's a societal dance we all participate in.
Okay.
Even if we're not always consciously aware of the steps.
Now, we've talked about this idea of audience tuning.
Right.
Tailoring our messages to please others.
Uh-huh.
Is that always a bad thing?
It really depends on the context and intent.
Okay.
Politicians are masters of this, right?
Yeah.
They craft their rhetoric to resonate with specific groups, sometimes even at the expense of truthfulness.
And that can feel manipulative, right?
Yeah.
Using language to sway opinions without necessarily being honest about your own beliefs.
Absolutely.
Right.
But there are also situations where adapting your message can be beneficial, even crucial.
Okay.
Think about a doctor delivering a difficult diagnosis.
Okay.
They might need to tailor their language to be both honest and compassionate, taking into account the patient's emotional state.
Or a teacher explaining a complex concept to young students.
Yeah.
They wouldn't use the same language they would with their colleagues.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between clarity and sensitivity.
Okay.
Being mindful of the ethical implications.
Right.
Are you tailoring your message to genuinely connect and inform? Or are you manipulating for personal gain?
Right.
That's the key question.
It definitely feels like a slippery slope.
It is.
Especially when you start thinking about the motivations behind those tailored messages.
And this brings us back to one of the most fundamental questions about deception.
Okay.
Why do we lie?
Yeah.
The book explores some fascinating evolutionary perspectives on this.
Okay.
Suggesting that deception might have been crucial for human survival.
Like those who could effectively lie or cheat might have had an advantage in securing resources or attracting mates.
That's one theory. It's not about endorsing those behaviors,
right,
but rather understanding their origins,
yeah,
how they might have contributed to our development as a species.
That's a helpful distinction.
Yeah.
It's like acknowledging the darker side of human nature,
right,
without necessarily condoning it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this evolutionary perspective also sheds light on why we're so good at detecting lies in others. We've evolved to be sensitive to inconsistencies,
right,
to subtle cues that might betray a deceiver.
It's like we all have this built-in lie detector,
yeah,
even if it's not always perfect.
Exactly. And that's why things like body language and micro-expressions can be so revealing.
Yeah.
We're constantly picking up on those subtle signals,
right,
even if we're not consciously aware of it.
So all those years of watching crime dramas have actually been training me to spot liars in real life.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But remember, even the most skilled lie detectors can be fooled. Deception is a complex dance.
Yeah.
And there's no foolproof way to always know the truth.
That's true. So if we can't always rely on our instincts,
right,
how can we become more discerning about deception in our own lives?
Yeah, that's a great question.
How do we protect ourselves from being manipulated without becoming totally cynical?
I think the key takeaway here is to cultivate a healthy skepticism without becoming jaded or distrustful of everyone around you.
So like a trust but verify approach.
Exactly.
Be open to people, but also be willing to question things.
Yeah.
Especially when something seems too good to be true.
Exactly. Be willing to critically evaluate information.
Especially when it comes from sources with a vested interest.
Oh.
Think about those overly enthusiastic salespeople.
Right.
Or politicians promising the moon.
Yeah.
It's healthy to be the bit skeptical.
Right. It's about using your critical thinking skills, considering multiple perspectives, and not blindly accepting things at face value.
Right.
Just because someone's a smooth talker.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And sometimes the most revealing clues aren't what people say, but what they don't say.
Oh.
Pay attention to omissions, inconsistencies.
Okay.
Attempts to deflect or change the subject. Those can be red flags.
So it's about reading between the lines. Paying attention to those subtle signals, both verbal and nonverbal.
Exactly. And this applies not only to external sources of information, but also to our own internal narratives. We often deceive ourselves, crafting stories that justify our actions or protect our egos.
You mean like those times when we convince ourselves?
Yes. We're doing something for someone else's benefit when deep down we know it's really about us.
Exactly. Developing self-awareness is crucial. To recognizing those patterns of self-deception.
Right.
It can be uncomfortable work, but it's essential for personal growth.
This whole conversation is making me realize that this deep dive is as much about understanding ourselves as it is about understanding others.
That's a brilliant insight. And perhaps that's the most valuable takeaway of all. By exploring the complexities of deception, we gain a deeper understanding of the human condition, both its light and its shadow.
And that knowledge can help us navigate the world with more awareness, compassion, and maybe even a little bit of healthy skepticism.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that deception is a part of life. But it doesn't have to define our interactions or limit our ability to connect with others in a genuine way.
This is all so fascinating, but I think we're running out of time for this part. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we move on? Okay, so we've been talking about all these different types of deception, but I'm curious, is there ever a way to be completely honest without causing total chaos? Like, is that even possible?
Well, that's a great question, and it reminds me of a line from Emily Dickinson.
Oh, yeah.
Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in circuit lies.
Oh, I love Emily Dickinson. What does that even mean, though?
It's like she's saying that sometimes the straight-up truth can be too harsh. It needs to be presented in a way that people can actually hear and understand.
So it's not always about lying. It's more about finding the right way to frame things to make the truth a little more palatable.
Exactly. Dickinson understood that blunt honesty can sometimes backfire. It's about finding that sweet spot between truth and diplomacy.
This makes me think about everything we've discussed about those little white lies. Those social niceties that keep things running smoothly. They might be deceptions, but they also serve a purpose.
It's like they're a lubricant that prevents friction in our interactions. A way to acknowledge someone's feelings without necessarily agreeing with them.
It all comes back to that idea of being aware of the subtle ways we use language, both to deceive and to connect with others. It's a delicate balance.
And a fascinating one, too. I think this deep dive has really highlighted the complexity of human communication. It's not as simple as just being honest or dishonest. There's so many layers to consider.
Definitely. I'm already finding myself paying more attention to the words I use. And how they might be perceived by others. A whole new level of awareness.
That's fantastic. I think that's the first step towards becoming a more effective communicator. Being mindful of the impact our words can have.
This has been such an insightful conversation.
It has been.
About something we don't always talk about openly, but it's clearly something we all deal with every day. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners as we wrap up this deep dive into deception?
I would encourage everyone listening to pay attention to those little lies you encounter and tell in the next few days. What do they reveal about your own values and priorities? How do they shape your interactions with others? And most importantly, how can you use this knowledge to become a more thoughtful and effective communicator?
That's a great challenge. I'm going to try that myself. It's been fascinating to explore this topic, and I think it's something we can all benefit from thinking about more consciously.
Absolutely. And remember, this deep dive wasn't about endorsing dishonesty. It was about shedding light on the complex role deception plays in our lives, giving you the insights to navigate it with more awareness and skill.
That's a perfect way to put it. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of deception. It's been a real eye-opener.
It was my pleasure. Until next time, stay curious and keep those critical